Welcome to The Dating Lab, the podcast that makes midlife dating simpler, saner, and maybe, hopefully, a little less overwhelming. I'm your host, Alyssa Dineen, and each week we'll break down one real dating challenge that adults 45 plus face today. From confusing apps and unclear profiles to first date nerves and slow fade messages. And you'll walk away with at least one practical tool you can use immediately to date with more confidence, clarity, and momentum. Think of this as your bi-weekly place to experiment, learn something new, and hopefully try something new without the pressure. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dating Lab. Today I have here with me a very special guest, a friend, and a relationship coach. She is a resilience and relationship coach who helps women navigate the emotional and practical aftermath of divorce so they can reclaim their power, rebuild their confidence, and design a life they love. Her journey into this work stems from her own path through the fire. She learned firsthand that resilience isn't about avoiding the pain, it's about discovering your own indestructible strength right in the middle of it. So welcome, Susanna. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge with all of us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I really am.
So we actually have a lot to talk about today. So we really need to just dive right in. I think these are going to really resonate with the community. So
great.
Last time we talked, you had met your husband just a few years prior and online, and you were building your blended family.
Yeah.
Where are things now, and what's changed since we last spoke?
So I think we last spoke in 2021. I had moved about a year before that to Long Island, and I had recently gotten married to my husband. So we're about to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary next week, which is really exciting. Thank you. So excited and proud of that. And our kids are growing up. One of our kids now lives in Georgia. Another one lives in Brooklyn. My son he'll be a college sophomore this fall. And our youngest child is about to be a high school senior. So everybody's growing up and living their lives and doing all the things they want to do. It's been really fun to co-parent with Dave and to be in it together with him.
And so you have one child from your previous marriage and he has 3 from his, right?
Yep,
okay.
Yep.
And your son is the youngest.
Second, he's the.
Got it. Okay.
College. Yep.
Great. All right. You went from Academy Award nominated film producer to a full-time coach.
Yeah.
What was the actual turning point where you knew this was the work you wanted to do?
The turning point happened a little bit slowly in that over time, it became clear to me that I just wasn't enjoying film production as much. It was hard on my body. The days were long. It was financially unstable. I loved the actual work itself, but it wasn't making me feel alive in the same way. And then I had this amazing thing happen, which is a friend referred me to a friend of hers who was going through a similar divorce to mine and said to me, could you talk to this woman as a friend and see if you could help her out? So I started talking to this woman every Sunday night on the phone, just as a friend. And at the end of every call, I would feel high because I knew I was helping her. And at the end of every call, she would say, oh my gosh, I could never get through this divorce without you. Thank you so much. And before I knew it, she referred 4 other people to me. So before I had definitely decided to become a coach, all of a sudden I was coaching and I was realizing that I loved it. I loved helping these women so much that it felt incredibly organic to me. And that I thought, oh my goodness, I could do this job from anywhere. I could be home more. I could create a more financially stable life for myself. And most of all, I could really have impact with these women. So it became very clear that that's what I was supposed to do.
So it really found you.
I guess so. Yeah. And also I was just really open to some other solution. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for having 4 clients without even starting a business yet.
That was pretty cool. I was very lucky. I felt very grateful about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. But that does feel so good. I mean, that's why I do what I do too. It's like when you really know you're helping someone through something that's difficult.
Yes.
It is very rewarding and it feels good to be able to help someone else through something you've already been through.
And I'm sure you feel this way. I always feel like part of our job, both of our jobs, is really to imagine the life that they want for them when it's hard for them. It's our job to be kind of like their cheerleader. I know you're going to have a happier life. I know you are. And we're going to help you get there. And it's fun. It's fun to do that.
Yeah, I often say to clients, like, I'm your cheerleader, I'm your coach, but I'm also your cheerleader here, you know, because everyone needs that. Yeah, that's so great. Yeah. So you started a monthly divorce support group, and I'm sure you hear a lot of different versions of divorce and marriages, but what's the one thing that women say in those groups that they would never say anywhere else, for example? What are they saying to you or to the group?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, and part of why I started the group, was I think women really need community when they're going through divorce. It's a very, very lonely process, and they feel very overwhelmed by all the decisions and all the steps and all the things that have to happen. And so when I realized that, I just decided to create a space for them to come monthly where they could talk about any of it and be with other women who are in a similar position to them. I really encourage kind of very raw vulnerability. And so sometimes our conversations are very funny and silly and light, and sometimes people show up and they cry. And the community rallies. And we have this monthly meeting. We also have a WhatsApp group now, and we read a couple books a year that we discuss. And it's grown into a really lovely group of women. I love it.
Wow. And so it sounds like you have some that stay in the group for a while, even if they're not necessarily in the thick of a divorce anymore.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah. The group has been running about 2.5 years, and it's usually anywhere between 5 and 15 people. People kind of come in and out, but it's been great. It's been really fun.
Yeah, it sounds nice. Yeah. I feel like I wish that I had something like that.
Me too.
When I was going through my divorce. I didn't even know that would exist, honestly.
I didn't even know that people like you and I existed when
I know. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So a lot of women tell me that they're not who they were in the marriage, but they haven't fully become whatever's next, and they're stuck in that in between. What do you tell someone in that space?
The biggest thing that I tell them to do when they're in that kind of in-between space is to really pay attention to what they want. So, and what I mean by that is what they want on a small level and on a big level. So, and to kind of work on that muscle of identifying and saying out loud, this is what I want, whether it's what they want to eat in a day, how they want to spend their time, what their aspirations are for where they want to live, what lights them up. Like I always tell this story that in my first marriage, I was a theater kid when I was a kid. And my former husband wasn't really into theater. So for many, many years, even though I live in New York City, I lived in Brooklyn at the time, I didn't really go to Broadway shows because I didn't want to go by myself. And after I got divorced, literally the first year, I went with 6 girlfriends to see Bring It On, which was a cheerleading musical, which was like the cheesiest musical of all time. But I cried through the whole experience because I felt like I was coming home to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so good.
Yeah. So I think that that's really what I encourage women to do, is to push the muscle of getting clear about what they want and not be afraid of saying it and then going after it, because that's really an important part of the healing process, is identifying what lights them up, what makes them happy. How do they get closer to that?
Right. Yeah. I think that's so, I love that. And I mean, I so relate to that too, because that, for me, it was skiing. I had completely given up skiing and snowboarding when I was with my ex-husband because he didn't enjoy either of those things. Yeah. And so it was so nice because when we got separated, I started skiing. I took my girls skiing every winter.
Yeah.
It was like it became a thing that we did with our friends. It became a social thing in the winter. So it was definitely one of those moments where I was like, oh my God, this feels so good to get back to myself. Yeah. Because I grew up with that too. So that's very similar.
I think many women who go through a divorce, one of the primary things I hear all the time, I'm sure you have heard this too, is just that we abandon ourselves in some ways in relationships sometimes. And so figuring out how to come back is a big part of the healing journey between when you're going through a divorce and when you're getting to the other side.
Yeah. It's so true. So, and is there a difference between what women say they need after divorce and what they actually need? I feel like that's related to what you just said.
Yeah. I think a lot of times the things people worry about most of all are sort of things that in the end they're able to figure out. Like they worry about money a lot. Or they worry about, having sex for the first time after their husband. Both of those things they're able to kind of navigate. They figure out what their financial lives are going to look like and they work it out, or they eventually go on dates and have sex. But what they really need is to just really get to know themselves again and to really do some deep work into learning about why didn't that marriage work? What happened? Like, what did we each bring to the table that made it not work? And how can we evolve and grow? So when we're ready, we'll meet the next person, if that's what we want, who is going to help us get to a happier, healthier way of being.
Right. What percentage of clients that you work with say to you, I never want to be with someone ever again? I'm curious.
I would say like maybe 30%. Most of them I would say do want to be with people again. But even that 30%, I think eventually turns around. That 30%, I would say in the beginning, they're wounded, they're sad, they've been really, really hurt, and it takes time to get to another.
Yeah, I think it's mostly fear.
Yeah.
For sure. I hear that a lot too, just in what I do, even not necessarily people that I work with, but just hearing that, oh, I would never date again, or I would never, it's interesting.
And I imagine for you, it's hard, it's a hard sell to get to somebody to convince them to date, but then once they're ready to date, it's so much fun for you to get to do what you do.
Yeah. Once somebody's ready, it is definitely, I think that it can be such a fun experience. And actually, you had fun dating, right? I feel like you're one of the few people to, like, there's not many people that say that. And I was one of them. You're one of them. I've met a few people along the way, but most people hate it, which I get. I totally get.
Yeah.
So actually, since we're on that topic, tell people a little bit about your experience dating and how long it took you to meet Dave. And
So I had been single for about 4.5 years before I met Dave. And I always say it's going to sound like an insane number, but it's not really. But I went on about 60 dates because I really wanted to meet someone. I really knew that there was someone out there for me. And I also knew that statistically, you have to keep dating to find your person. And I also, at the time, I was a documentary filmmaker. And I tried to look at dating as sort of we're just getting to understand humans. And so I would go into every date almost like, not an interview exactly, but more like a fact-finding mission. What am I going to learn about humanity tonight? And what stories am I going to hear that are going to be interesting and pique my interest?
Yeah.
And in some ways that took the pressure off, because then the dates, it wasn't about finding the one. It was more about finding some entertaining stories.
Right. I fully agree. I think we've talked about this before, but that's how I looked at it too. Every date was, sure, there was a date here and there where I was like kind of dreading it because you kind of get burnt out. But for the most part, I was going into them thinking, who am I meeting tonight? Who is this person? What are they going to be like? What am I going to hear? Yeah. Yes. Almost like an anthropological type of study, which I think is a good way to think of dating, because I mean, otherwise it can get really tedious.
It just makes it more fun. It just keeps it more like an open experience.
Right. Yeah. So I guess before Dave, had you met anybody else that you were interested in? Had you had any other like short-term?
I did date one other person for about 6 months who I really liked, but I sort of knew intuitively that we weren't each other's person. He wasn't really interested in having kids or being around kids. And I had a young son at the time. My son was 4 when I got divorced. So I sort of knew that he wasn't my person in the long term. However, I always tell my clients that dating him was really wonderful because we had a lot of chemistry. And he was very chivalrous in a way that felt really nice to me. And he was very reliable, which also felt really nice to me. And so for that period of time, it was just exactly what I needed. And when it ended, I was sad, but I also knew that he wasn't going to be it for a long time.
Right, right.
So, yeah. And so then I dated around for another like year and a half, 2 years after that. And then I eventually met Dave.
Right. And with Dave, was it a major chemistry right away, or was it a build, or how did that go?
Yeah. It's interesting because I was very attracted to first of all, I just want to say he does not look like anyone I ever dated before or anyone I ever thought I was attracted to. But there was something about the sparkle in his eye on his photo, on his profile, that I was hugely drawn to. I just thought, I want more of that. And then we talked on the phone once after we matched. And even in the first conversation, we just had so much in common. We said a lot of, I don't know, there was a lot there. And then he sent me something he had written, which I loved. It was a beautifully written article that he wrote about his son. And I loved that. And it really made me feel very just open towards him. And then on our first date, he was and still is literally like the best listener I've ever met. And so right away, I thought, okay, there's something to this person. And I think we both knew almost immediately, pretty quickly, that there was something there.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
And then, and so then you start dating, and then what I want to tell people is that you actually made a pretty major move. She lived in Brooklyn and she moved out to the suburbs of Long Island.
Yes.
And how did you know when that was the right move to make? And how did that all go down? It's
funny. I was very against it for a long time. In fact, a lot of my friends, it took me 4 years to be ready to do it, or 3.5 years. And a lot of my friends kept saying, why don't you move to Long Island? Why don't you move to, and I, for the longest time was like, I'm never moving to Long Island. I am not leaving Brooklyn. And then I went to visit Dave for one weekend out here near where I live now. And we just had this really beautiful weekend together. And I suddenly realized that my home was with him, not in any particular city or space. And then 6 weeks later, he proposed. So once he proposed, I was like, okay, I guess I'm moving to Long Island.
Right. And so I guess, I think this is so important for people to hear, because I get a lot of pushback on dating people that are too far away.
Yeah.
And not that that's that far. He's about an hour. Is that
right?
From
about an hour.
Yeah. So not that that's crazy, but eventually you guys need to figure out who's moving where, right? Yeah. But I feel like I think what I try to tell people is, of course, it's not ideally you'd meet someone who lives 2 blocks away from you. Right. Yeah. In a perfect world, we'd all meet someone really close, but that doesn't always happen. And if it was this amazing person, wouldn't you be willing to work something out? It's, eventually, once you know it's real, someone's moving somewhere, like, wouldn't you be willing to do that, to have that conversation? And I think it's for some people, it's like a no-brainer, like, yeah, of course, and some people it's really hard for them it's too abstract of an idea. And I think it's hard for them to picture. So what can you tell people about that? Like, I'm sure there was a lot of, 3.5 years is a long time to do long distance.
Yeah, it was long. And we would say that like coordinating our schedules felt like, I don't know, some master plan. We would sit down once a month and try to figure out which nights would he be in Brooklyn? Which weekends would I come to Long Island? Which kids had, because we have 4 kids, which kid had which thing? I mean, it was like a master negotiation to try to figure out how we would spend our time together.
Right.
But I think when you find the person that you are that's your person, that you feel like is your right person, it feels annoying at times. Yeah, the commute is annoying. I mean, I remember a few times I drove out from Brooklyn to Long Island and the traffic was terrible. One time in particular, it took me over 3 hours to get here. And, I'm not saying it can't be annoying, but ultimately the reward of being with your person, the rest of it is just details. You figure it out.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just so important for everyone to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, and I have to say, I hear of this a lot, with friends and friends of friends and clients, and, where they met someone who didn't live in their city, even like not even an hour away, like a plane ride away.
Yeah.
And they made it work, and it's been so worth it. And so I think that I like when people keep an open mind, and it sounds like you really did, even though you were like, I'm never leaving Brooklyn.
In the beginning, I was not open, but then I eventually, it also helped that the timing sort of worked out because my son was he was in 7th grade when we got engaged. And so I was looking towards the New York City high school process, which is a challenge.
Oh my God.
And Dave sort of said, well, if you move to Long Island, he can go to high school, a really good high school in our community.
Right.
So the timing is a factor for sure. But I just think you have to trust in the relationship, and you have to trust in the details are just details. And
was there a part of you who thought, oh, I'm just going to wait it out and then, maybe he'll move here someday or something? Or did you?
He wouldn't do that because our youngest child is younger. He's 2 years younger than my son.
Right.
And so he was going to be in this community and because of the type of parent Dave is and wants to be, I always knew he wanted to be an involved parent. So I could have waited it out and maybe been long distance, but I knew that he was never going to 100% move to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
At that, not for many years.
Yeah. So you've said that the best advice is deceptively simple, and that's be vulnerable. But for women who feel like vulnerability got them hurt in the first time, how do you help them find that again? And I think this relates to what you do and what I do. So I'm curious what you have to say.
Yeah. I mean, I think people think of vulnerability as like bearing your soul, and it doesn't have to be that kind of raw. It can be more just sharing how you really feel and not feeling that you have to put a certain look on it or choose your words carefully. Just being really open, because people feel that. And also in all relationships, friendships too, the more honest you are, the more there's a trust that gets built with vulnerability. Yeah. And when you share how you really feel about something, somebody is able to meet you in that place, ideally, hopefully, in a healthy relationship.
Right. And I think what you and I have talked about before is that with vulnerability, I know it's scary, but also it's the only way 100%. A relationship can develop.
100%.
Anyway, whether it's romantic or friendship. But with anything, you cannot move forward unless there's some vulnerability on both sides.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I've learned in my second marriage that I was not so good at in my first marriage, which is around vulnerability, is really sharing when I feel upset, even when it's something that maybe Dave is doing or that's hard to say. I'm willing to really unpack it and really get to the bottom of it. I think in my first marriage, I was more protective of his feelings or afraid of fully letting it all out. But I've sort of retrained myself to really be super honest, and it's helped our connection. And I think in dating, even in the beginning, you have to try.
Yeah. And it is scary. It really is. Yeah. I don't discount that, but I think again, I think it's also like a muscle you have to kind of work. It's something that you have to practice.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, really with all, I feel like with everything around dating, it's a lot of practice with all of it, but especially with being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I like the way you said that. I feel like that's a good way to say it. It's not about bearing your soul. And I think when I say that to people too, I think they're like, wait, I'm not going to be vulnerable on my second date with somebody.
Right.
Do you think that can be as simple as just being really honest about, I mean, it could be anything really.
Yeah.
Something really simple.
Yeah.
But just being open.
Yeah.
How do you help someone trust their own judgment again after a marriage where, for whatever reason, they didn't trust their own judgment? Within the relationship. Yeah.
I help them to see the other parts of their life where they have really good judgment. So maybe they have great judgment as a parent or in their work or in their relationship with their family. Sometimes in romantic relationships, we focus on the other person more than ourselves. So we sort of abandon ourselves, like I said before, or we're willing to make compromises or let people get away with things that don't serve us. I'll say it that way. Part of it is just helping them rebuild their confidence. And one of the ways to do that is showing them all the other parts of their life where they have excellent judgment.
Yeah.
And then I'll say the second part, actually, I'm really glad I remembered to say this, which is helping them to tap into their nervous system and understand when they're dating or when they're meeting somebody new, how is it feeling in their body, so that they learn to differentiate, actually, I felt really relaxed with that person on that date. That felt really just good and healthy. Or actually, that person really made me feel uncomfortable and I felt really just not at ease. And when we identify those cues from our body, that also helps to learn how to build our own confidence again.
Yeah, that's that's really good advice. And that's the advice, it's related, but also it's the advice I give to people when they're trying to figure out, when in dating, who do I want to be with? And it's like, instead of thinking about what job they have and how tall they are and whether they have hair or not, it's more like, how do I feel around this person? Yeah, exactly. And when you come home from the date, it's like, what are you thinking about? Like, are you worried they're not going to text you again? Is it anxiety, or is it like just, you're just feeling excitement, or just even just neutral and just happy, So I think that's so important because it's something that I was not taught, for sure. I don't know about you, but
definitely
when I was growing up, no one taught me to check in with myself to see how I felt around a person. Just see if that was, and if they had, I probably wouldn't have, made a lot of the relationship mistakes that I made. But I think that is such a key point. It really is. Yeah. And actually, on the note of women's confidence, and I'm sure you've, as a coach with divorced women, you probably run across this a lot, and I do too, women that have been left by their husbands for another woman, or infidelity, I guess I should say.
Yep.
And I feel like that's a really tricky one to work through. Even if someone comes to me and they've, of course, if they're ready to date, generally they've, done some therapy and they've, worked through it on some level, but there's still a lot of feeling insecure about themselves. Yeah. Not even just fear that the next person is going to do that. I think it's more like feeling like they're not worthy of someone or something like that because of being left by their husband, which I think is, it's awful. And I really empathize with that. And I didn't ever go through that. So I feel like it's hard for me to understand or know what to say to help someone along. What do you tell your clients in that situation?
I really try to help them circle back to the fact that it's not their fault, first of all, and that they didn't deserve that. And even though I might not have been involved with the client when they were in the relationship, my guess is that client usually has cues that the relationship is not going well before that happens. Mm-hmm. And that a mature husband or spouse or partner would address the reasons why the relationship was not going well. And the fact that that person chose instead to go have an affair shows the emotional limitation of that person. I try to focus on that to get them away from thinking that it was about them and more towards thinking that that former partner probably didn't have the capacity to have the kind of relationship that would be the healthiest and happiest.
Right. That's great advice. That is so well said.
Yeah,
that's really great.
It's really hard and really painful. And
yeah, so painful.
Yeah. Every time I hear a story like that.
I know. It's, and it's really hard to recover from. I feel like I've had, I've worked with a lot of women who've been in that position, and it's really hard to recover. And I feel like some of them have even, they dip their toe in the dating pool and they're like, I can't, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but that's great advice. So what patterns do you see across the women in your groups, the ones that show up again and again, regardless of how different their marriages were?
I mean,
are there any similar patterns no matter what type of marriage they'd come from?
I think there's usually a pattern of first grief, then anger, then reclaiming themselves, then getting proud of themselves and seeing all the things that they're able to do and realizing that they've come further than they thought they could. Then resulting in a feeling of freedom and sort of like that they could do anything.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, that's great.
But it is usually a process. It doesn't, we have to go through all the steps and feel all the feelings.
Do you see that most of the women you work with, are they doing therapy simultaneously when they're working with you?
Oftentimes. I am very much a fan of having people be in therapy and coaching at the same time because they're very different. Therapy is so much more about your history and all of your emotional setup, whereas coaching is much more about coming up with proactive actions that can help you take next steps.
Right. You have like actual plans that you come up with your clients, which is so great. Yeah. And goals that you can set. And so for our last few questions, for a woman who's done the coaching work and done the inner work and is still hesitant to be on the dating apps or get back on the dating apps, whatever her position might be, what's actually holding her back in your experience?
I think it's really fear of judgment. And I think that sometimes the apps are not the way. Sometimes they need to meet people in real life, or they need to meet people through friends, or there could be, meet somebody at work. There could be lots of other ways that they meet people. But I think people are really afraid after divorce of making a mistake or of being judged by somebody. I just try to encourage them to take baby steps. And often I would encourage them to work also with someone like you to help them get their profile in the best place and feel really confident about their profile if they are going to be on the apps, and to think outside of the box in terms of dating and to just take one step at a time.
Right. That's great advice too. Yeah. And what's one thing you'd tell a woman about dating again as a divorced parent that nobody else is saying?
I don't know if nobody else is saying it, but I would say that dating can be really fun when you're a divorced parent. It can open up a sense of freedom that you don't even realize you wanted or needed, but all of a sudden you have. And I think if you see it that way, it can become that way. I mean, dating is hard. There's no question about it. But I think, the good news is when you're divorced, if you share custody with your former spouse, you do have some free time. So it's kind of fun to use that free time to meet people and to see who else is out there and to try to start a new chapter for yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, that's for me, it was, and it sounds like for you, it really was such a time of self-discovery, and I really did have fun with it. And I did have so much extra time on my hands. So it was a way to kind of, occupy myself. Yeah. So,
and I think it's important to date while you're doing the other things in your life that light you up, seeing friends and moving your body and following other interests. It's important to do all of that.
Exactly.
But dating must be one part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Such great advice, Susanna. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom.
I love being here with you. It's so fun.
Yeah, so fun. I really appreciate it. So tell people how they can find you and follow you and find out more about your coaching.
So the best way to find me is on my website, which is susannaludwig.com. But I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and believe it or not, most recently TikTok.
I know.
I'm trying to get myself out there a little more. And so it's a little confusing because my Instagram is Suze, not Susanna, but Suze Ludwig. But I'm on all the places. You can find me on all those places.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. Nice to see you.
So good to see you.
Thanks for listening to The Dating Lab. If today's episode gave you something to think about, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And if you want more dating guidance, you can find me on Instagram or at stylemyprofile.nyc.com. Until next time, remember, dating is a process, not a verdict. You're doing better than you think.